Today's workshop is on the subject of opinion pieces or op-eds, as you might see them and hear them talked about in different places. The aim of our workshop today is to work in a methodical manner in order to write an opinion piece, and hopefully from the reading, the chapter on semantic violence by our former colleague Sylvia Swindon, you'll be able to gain a greater appreciation of the hidden power of words and the charges and the registers that words are associated with. And this will become very important when we start writing opinion pieces. So I'm going to give a short presentation now on the methodology that we're going to use when it comes to our writing an opinion piece. And so I'm going to share my screen and right. There we go. So we're just presenting here 10 steps for writing an op-ed. I asked all of you to come to the workshop today with a topic in mind, and during the course of the exercise we're going to work on that topic. But in any case, the first step is to choose a topic and try and summarize your opinion in one sentence. Now, you may decide later on that this is your headline, and in fact I have written many op-eds after a headline floated into my head. So it can be that, or you can write your headline at the end. But anyway, the starting point is a topic. So what's the context for your topic? What has prompted you to write this piece? And what is the hook to the news? I mean, we're a news agency. So obviously, any opinion that we want to publish, there should generally always be some connection to what's happening in the news at the time. So what is it? What prompted you to suddenly feel you've got a really strong opinion that you would like to impress? That's going to be the step 2. Step 3 will be to develop your argument. Now, there could be 2 different types of opinion. You may have seen something which you oppose a great deal, or of course it may be the opposite. There may be something has happened which you think is something fantastic, which more people should know about, and which potentially has the seeds of something which could be very interesting. So generally there are these two positions. Maybe a government, an institution, or an individual has done something or is doing something still which is generating pain and suffering in one or more individuals, or alternatively something has happened which is alleviating pain and suffering in one or more individuals, and we would like to expand that further. What kind of opinion is yours? In any case, we need to develop the argument and understand some of the key points of information: who, what, when, where, how, why, their justification in this case. Yeah. You may have reached your opinion because you're relating different things together. So a government minister said X, an institution did Y, and some other person or some people did something else. Yeah. So it may be that you need to answer those questions, who, when, where, what, how, for all of those different parts. And it might be that you decide to structure your opinion piece with different subsections, and all of that is fine. Or if it's not too long, it may be just like in a page or something. You may decide that there's no need for any subheadings. But in any case, if you are relating 2 or 3 different areas together, you will need to gather the information about your opinion. So then your opinion is because there is some kind of contrast with what you have seen or what you've heard, or it may be because you're in agreement. As I said, it could be in agreement, but you might have reasons why you strongly agree with what you've seen. And again, you might have strong opinions about why you disagree. Yeah, and sources that can help you can be from authority figures or historical figures. You might take a quote from someone to illustrate your point. You may support your opinion based on the reports that have come from different authorities. Beware here that when we are using figures and reports from other authorities, we have to have pay a little bit of attention as to who those authority figures are, who's funding them, what's their point of view, why are they producing the reports that they're producing. It's not always obvious, but many think tanks, for instance, purports to be kind of independent, developing original thought. Frequently, think tanks are funded by government institutions or by people with vested interests in maintaining the status quo or in moving things towards their own point of view. So, and it's not a problem that think tanks and institutions have a point of view, but again, it's like what we've said before in our conversations about objectivity. There is really no such thing as objectivity, and therefore it's really important always to know, even with our sources, what's their purpose in publishing what they're publishing. There may also be statistics from international organizations, other media, social media. Often opinion pieces are illustrated embedding a tweet from someone else. If that's the kind of thing that you would like to do when publishing an opinion piece, I'm not sure if we'll have in these sessions how to do that, but if we do come onto the stage where we're inviting you to participate as editors in Presensa, then we'll explain how those kind of technical aspects happen when you're editing an article. But for now, if you want to include a thing like a tweet or something that you've seen in Instagram or anything, put the link to it when you're developing your article, and then we'll work out when it's uploaded onto the website how to do that. Your supporting information may also be ideological. I mean, you may have a religious point. Your point of view may come from something connected to religion or a culture or an ideology. I mean, often the stuff that we're publishing in Presensa is frequently influenced by universal humanism. So, we include those kind of things, because an ideology basically means a vision of the world, a way of looking at the world, which has got all of its foundations, its ideological foundations. So again, there's no problem. Your ideology can be anything that you like, but let's make it explicit. And obviously, if it's an ideology which is promoting violence and discrimination, it's not going to be interesting for Presensa or for nonviolent journalism. But there are plenty of ideologies out there which are completely nonviolent and are looking for nonviolent social change. Anyway, gather all of this information, all of your supporting information. And again, we're going to put it all into a template, which we're going to see later. And this template is going to act as kind of a repository for all of the information that you think is relevant to your opinion piece. The next step, once you've gathered all this information, is to give it a structure. Put the different paragraphs in a coherent order. Ask yourself, does the flow of the paragraphs make sense? Do the paragraphs themselves make sense? I don't know how the education of language happens in different countries, but in the UK at the moment, when they're teaching people how to write essays of a critical thinking nature, then they recommend that every paragraph should start with a point, should then be followed up with some evidence, and then some explanation about how that links back to your original hypothesis. There are many resources for this on the internet, and if anyone would like me to point them in the direction of some of those sources, I'm very happy to do so. So then having where are we? Yeah, having structured your opinion, we'd like now to write a conclusion to it. This will be at the bottom of the article, obviously. Having collated all the elements that cause you to write this opinion, you should now be able to express your opinion in a concluding section of one or more paragraphs. Not very many, but it should be clear that at the end there is a concluding section. Then we're going to review the language. Now, the reading that accompanied today's workshop was on the subject of semantic violence, and it talks there about how the use of certain words can be, behind the use of every word there's an intention, basically. So a word in itself can be completely benign, but you put it in a particular context and suddenly there's a very negative charge with it. Yeah. Now, our style of journalism is not to be insulting. It's not to leave people with we're trying to make people feel uncomfortable in their positions sometimes. Yeah, we're trying to generate kind of a cognitive dissonance. Yeah, making people see that the world that we live in and their ideas and their thoughts about the world that we live in don't always match up to the evidence of people's own eyes. And I think that's clear. And so we're trying to create those little bits of cognitive dissonance in our readers in order to make them to start to think and recognize that actually what people are used to seeing is a very small window on the world, and that if you expand the window, you can see there's much more information, much more data, and with that wider vision of the world, it is then possible to develop new conclusions, and in that way also change your ideas and your beliefs about the world. And so this is kind of the interest, but we don't want to do that in a way which is coming over as insulting. So the review of the language at the end is to just check that all the language that we are using is as straightforward as possible. So then once we've done all of that, we're almost in a position we can publish. We need to have a lead-in paragraph. Yeah, after your reader has read the headline, this is going to be the second thing. And so if they're kind of mildly interested by the headline, what goes in the lead-in paragraph should hook the interest of the reader so that then they will actually click on the link and open and read the whole thing. Yeah, so there has to be some elements in there which could be potentially controversial, but certainly that pique the interest of your audience. Either this can be in a form of a simple paragraph. I often do it like that, but other people choose to do it with 2 or 3 bullet points. Either way is fine. Then finally, deciding on a headline. Again, you may have started like this whole process with a sentence or something which will be your headline, but maybe it doesn't work out like that. So at the end, you need to think of a headline. Again, we're looking for something which is going to engage our reader. Headlines normally answer the questions what, who, where, when, how. Yeah, that's typically what happens, but they can also be poetic or abstract. Now, as the author of an article, you have the freedom to put the article that you wish to put. However, a word of warning that if you do make your article poetic and it goes over the top of the head of your reader, it doesn't matter how incredibly well written your article is, how eloquent your opinion is, if you haven't managed to engage with the reader in the first 20 words, then you lose that opportunity for the reader to be able to engage with what you're wanting to communicate. So something like "what a stupid mistake" expresses an opinion, but it doesn't tell us anything about what your opinion relates to. Whereas if your opinion is why Russia's invasion of Ukraine is an epic mistake, there's enough information there for the reader to say, okay, well, actually, this topic of the Russian war is something interesting for me. I'm quite interested. Or they also have the freedom to say, actually, you know what, I'm completely overwhelmed with everything that's happening with the war. I don't want to read it. Yeah. But either way, in your headline, you give the opportunity to the reader to make an opinion very quickly so that they can take advantage of what you're writing. And then as the last step, from the point of view of an editor, someone who's going to publish your work, it will be great if you can also send with it an image that you think is appropriate. We talked about this in our fourth workshop, and I think in the PowerPoint presentation there were some elements and some sources for copyright-free images. David Anderson's one of his favorite sources is caricatures, and there's a very good caricaturist, Don Quixote, which if you go to his website, you can often find images which are under a Creative Commons license, and we can use those as well. Yeah. So to finish, writing is learning a language. Yeah, there are many ways to achieve a written production. When you're at school, when they're teaching you languages, you learn the grammar, you learn the rules and how it's structured. But when you get into the real world, you realize that people speak very differently and in many different ways. And you think, why the hell did they teach us that at school when it doesn't make any sense? But the point is that when you're learning a language, you have to start with a framework. And then once you have kind of gathered a feeling for how to speak, then you stop worrying about the structure. Yeah. So this technique, and we're going to use a template in today's workshop, is just a way to get started in the topic. After practicing for a while, you will develop your own technique and you'll never have to look at anyone's template ever again. So there you go. That's a presentation about how to write an opinion piece. Does anyone have any questions at this point? No. Great. Hello, Bruna. I see you've joined us. I hope you caught some of that PowerPoint presentation. Did you miss very much?
I think the first two steps.
The first 2 points. Okay, I'll send it through. Actually, I'll send it through on this.
They are recorded, Tony.
Yeah, it's recorded in any case.
You can take it afterwards.
Yeah. Okay, so what we're going to do now for the exercise is we're going to work on developing your op-ed. So actually, I'm going to need to send you all the template. So hold on 1 minute. Bear with me. Okay, so in your inboxes, you should be able to find the my lesson plan for today, and at the bottom in the Annex 1 of the lesson plan, there is a little table, and this relates to all of the different steps that we have just seen in our presentation. So what I'm going to do is we're going to put you all into a breakout room, and so for the next 40 minutes or so, you want me to make you a co-host, don't you? Yes. And what we're going to do for the next 40 minutes is I want you to start developing your opinions using this template. But first of all, before we go into the breakout rooms, I'm going to ask every one of you to just give us the topic of your opinion piece. We'd like to hear a little bit about the opinion piece that you're going to work on before we get into it. So I'm going to call on you in the order which I see you.
Tony, how many people do we do? 2 or 3? We
No,
do
just
2 groups?
just one group.
Oh, okay.
Yep. So Snigdha.
So the topic I was thinking of was the problematic resurgence of alpha male heroes in Indian cinemas, because India is a culture where cinema is not just entertainment. It literally affects society. It changes people's thinking and how they react to things. It kind of dictates how people are supposed to feel and think about certain things. And in the last 4 or 5 years, I don't know, there are just n number of movies just where this alpha male larger than life hero is coming, and those movies are just earning massive amount of money on the box office. And after having this entire phase of Me Too movement and finally having more women stories and women representation in the movies where women are not just props as in heroes, girlfriend, or etc., etc., there is again this happening. So I don't know, it feels like you take 2 steps forward and you're going 4 steps backward again. And there was this recent first of its kind survey done to actually like an actual study survey done to find out the number of women working behind the cameras, and be it as cameramen, be it as HODs, be it in like production, be it as writers, editors, etc. And there is less than 10% women working in every department, like less than 10%. And still people think that's a big number, because few years back it was less than 2%.
Yeah.
So even when you now think it's a small number, it's a large increase, but it still feel that like you're just way behind as you should be at this point of time.
Yeah.
In every industry, women participation is increasing, and then this is an industry where still it's lagging behind, and we think that it is still a progress. I think it's like a juxtaposition in itself. So I wanted to write something about that, and I just can't take it when people try to justify as like, oh, it's light entertainment, and people find it fun to watch like action movies like this, but there has to be a point where you become socially conscious, and not everything can't be justified as that. Like I saw this interview where this director literally said, oh, the woman is not there, but the mother's death was the motivation for the story. But women have no screen time. It doesn't matter if it was the motivation or not. Ultimately, people are not seeing that on the screen. So yeah, that was.
Do you have any examples of women playing alpha roles in Indian cinema, or it's just there's nothing like that?
There are, but there are just very far and few in between.
Yeah.
If I can find 20 movies like this where men are the heroes, I can only find one movie in a year where it's the opposite. So that it can be like the divide can be way larger. That skewered is the number.
I think it's a great topic, and I think coming back to what I said in the presentation, that there should be a hook to the news. That the thing is that this Me Too movement is always a topic for the news, because it's the feminist movement is it almost doesn't need that there's some particular thing that happens there, because it's every day. Yeah. So I think it works very well. I think if you've got, for instance, if you've got that report that you were talking about, will be an excellent source. And I think you have some elements there which could be really interesting, Snigdha. So I'm looking forward to how that will turn out. Carolina.
Okay, so the theme I was thinking about exploring would be animal exploitation, but not within the most talked about parts of the media. So not within eating meat and being used as guinea pigs and everything. I was thinking about focus mainly on how animals are used within tourist attractions, so circus zoos and everything, and that would be the more mainstream parts. And then I would like to focus on the part of the drug sniffing animals and the grenade sniffing animals. I think that will be really interesting. I have some data as well. I have like tons of examples, even like the training animals, the beauty contests and everything, the animal breeds, the domestication of wild animals and everything. I think it's a very it has a very wide range of topics that I can exploit. And I talked to Pia yesterday, and she actually pointed out there is an excellent idea, because then later I can just like focus on one and another and do tons of articles about different topics. So I was thinking about doing that.
Great. Is animal testing of drugs and cosmetics and stuff, is that in the scope of this as well?
It is, yeah.
It is, yeah. Okay, great.
I have zoos, circus, animal fights, training animals, beauty contests, sniffing dogs, so drugs, bombs, and bodies even like during catastrophes and everything. Animal breed, domestication of wild animals, animal testing, tourist attraction. And here I have the examples of camels, horses, donkeys, and even like swimming with dolphins and everything. And we can even relate that to some documentaries that are on Netflix. There's one really good about whales and everything. It's amazing. So yeah.
Okay, very good. Looking forward to that one. Kat.
So I've kind of like jumped around a few topics. So actually what I've settled on is different to what I talked to you about on Monday, Tony. But I was wanting to focus on social media and mental health, kind of just with there's such a rise, particularly in teenage girls, of like mental health issues, which has been in part attributed to the rise of social media. But I'm also really interested in sort of, in a general sense, how it affects society as a whole, because when we say social media, you know, at one point that meant sort of like MSN, like chatting things, and that really was social. But what we call social media now it's actually like a sort of addictive entertainment kind of slot machine type structure. So it's also, I'd be interested in looking at the sort of how social media has evolved from being actually social and from actually connecting people to actually the people you're connecting with aren't people that you necessarily know, and it's actually kind of replacing TV. But also I watched a really interesting documentary basically talking about how how to put it, it's like the way that the algorithms and the psychology that's used to keep people hooked, the kind of ethics of that, and how they're like, you know, there's people who've worked, you know, at Pinterest or at Facebook or wherever, who've since quit because they've seen it as so unethical, and are able to tell these stories about how, like, you know, they knew what they were doing and they went ahead and did it anyway, and now we're seeing the consequences. And yeah, I mean, there's so much more to it. I don't want to take up too much time, but yeah, that's the kind of general basis. Was there
a trigger that got you to this topic, Kat? What was it that got you there?
I think my own social media addiction. And like feeling, and I guess, and then sort of like starting to research into like, okay, why is it so hard to pull myself away from the screen, and then starting to dig a bit deeper and realize, oh wait, actually, you know, there is something a bit more sinister behind this. And I think there are so many people walking around feeling so guilty and so awful because they're not as productive as they wish they were, or they, you know, social media addiction is also a really weird sort of acceptable addiction, even though it can be very destructive for some people, you know, and it stops people living their lives as fully as they'd like to, you know, and especially affecting mental health of young people. And I don't think we've fully even, like, I'd like to look to see what studies have been done on it, because obviously it's a recent phenomenon in the last 10, 20 years. Yeah, like I'd be interested to see what studies have been done about how does it actually affect the brain. Like I read in a book that, you know, watching too much TV or that kind of entertainment can increase risks of Alzheimer's, for example. So yeah, kind of going down that route as well, and looking at, well, actually, is this just a harmless, you know, you zone out and like you scroll for a little bit, or is there actually something a lot worse to this, that like a serious issue that needs addressed?
There are several studies, Kat, related to the effect that screens in general have in kids.
Right.
Yeah, in small kids. So there you will find a lot of research. more than in adults.
Mm-hmm.
And the U.S. Congress, the U.S. Congress also did a hearing, and it was very strong testimony because they find out then they were purposely manipulating the algorithms to addict the kids, and Instagram did, had a big issue. So I know it's
Yeah, and obviously it's very serious because there are stories which you hear from time to time of young people who've killed themselves.
Yeah,
because of the pressure that they experience through social media.
Yeah, exactly. But I think it's interesting for me because my job is actually social media. Like that's what I do for work, and I see the benefits of it, and it's such a powerful medium. But then there's this really dark side to it as well. So I feel like it would be. I feel like I'd be able to give a balanced opinion piece as well, because I could kind of like give the context and intro of this is actually my job, but there's this whole other side of it. And I think it also relates kind of to, the non-violent journalism thing, because it is about how is media used in order to influence people, and is that being used in a violent or a non-violent way?
Excellent topic. Maisa?
Hi. So the topic that I was considering is related to what happened recently in Gaza, the Gaza bombings, when Israel bombed Gaza recently. Since I already know a few people who live there, and I saw recently in the news that life is slowly going back to normal. And I also read David's article on humanizing the world and going back to normal, I believe. And it made me think about, is it actually normal, and what is normal in Gaza, and how is it considered normal, and why should it be considered normal in the first place, especially since recently they were bombed. And I remember last year as well, in May, or maybe for 2 months, they were bombed as well. It's like they are in a constant life of re-traumatization that I saw. So I wanted to link it to that. And I also saw something called Mowing the Grass by Israeli militants, and how they each time they bomb Gaza in order to mow the grass, and they end up killing children and women.
Sorry, can you say that again? Because I couldn't quite understand.
Mowing the grass.
Mowing the grass. Okay, all right.
Yeah, I think I saw that in several articles, and I also saw the journalist named Mehdi Hassan. He's in Al Jazeera, and he talked about that idea, and that's how I learned more about the idea of mowing the grass.
Okay.
So that's what I wanted to talk about, to link what happened in Gaza and if life is actually normal there after everything that has happened, and in constant wait for when Israel might mow the grass again.
Yeah, fantastic topic, Maisa. Looking forward to seeing how that one turns out. Bruna?
Okay, I don't have anything figured out yet, but I was thinking about like maybe freedom of expression and democracy and freedom of press. Last week, a journalist quit her job because she wanted to show a video of how citizens said negative things to the new Minister of Economy, and she was censored. She wasn't allowed to, and that's why she quit her job. And it's been like a topic during this week. The channel said it because they didn't want to reproduce violence, but the thing is, they've been showcasing like other similar situations with other politicians, and it turns out the person controlling the content is a friend of the new Minister of Economy. And I kind of like remember sometimes when I'm at my dad's house and I watch a broadcast that is not aligned with the government, so they say like true things that are negative, to the president and the vice president and etc. And my brother was like shocked, and he was like, how's not like taken down? Like, how's this channel taken down? Like, people cannot talk about this, about the government, although they're right. And I'm like, but it's freedom of expression. And if we didn't have this, like, what would happen to democracy? Like, we wouldn't have democracy. And yeah, and I was like, also remember like this, I don't know if it was a paper written by a man named Robert Sadal. He said, well, real democracy doesn't exist. We only have like competitive oligarchies, but it's like, you need like all these characteristics, and the more, you know, it's like this list, and the more you check, more the characteristics you check, the more the closer. And I was thinking about that. It's like I don't have things figured out. It's just like, but
you know what you've said so far. I mean, there's lots of great stuff there. First of all, you've got your hook to the news. This woman was sacked last week. Okay, so we've got the news. You know, the topic. You know, hypocrisy. You know, in some cases they will show images. In other cases they won't show images. And then you've got the political interference from someone, you know, who is connected somehow to a minister. I mean, you've got a lot of good stuff in there, and I think you've got the elements for what could be a very interesting opinion piece. So yeah, all of those sound great. Anyone else from the trainers got any comments on any of that? No, it seems that everyone is also equally enthusiastic. So we're going to put you into the group now, only so that then you can bounce ideas off of each other. But the idea is for the next half an hour. How much time have we got? So we're going to need 25 minutes at the end for the presentations. So that gives, I don't know, about yes, about 20 minutes to have a go at looking at the template, starting to gather and collect the information. What will be great is when you come back, I'd like to hear your headline. Yeah. And what else would I like to hear? And any of the information. Yeah. So the different subsections, if you're going to tackle it in a kind of structured way, who are your sources, and elements from your conclusion. So you don't need to come back and give the whole thing, but I'd like to see some of the elements that you are going to make it into your final article. So we're going to work until about 5 past the hour, and then we'll come back and then we'll hear some presentations from you, and yeah, and then wrap up the workshop for this week. So David, when you're ready.
Bruna made a very interesting point. She'd watched the documentary I referred to and made the point that there were certain things and perspectives that were missing from it in terms of like communication side of things, but also if I understood correctly, like, you know, the documentary, a lot of what it does is it kind of shows the behind the scenes in a very sort of dramatized way. So like there's this kind of avatar that, you know, is being controlled. The avatar is the person they're trying to get addicted, and they're collecting information so that they can try and like draw them in as much as possible. But then it does kind of leave out the side of things of like, well, actually at the end of the day, you know, human beings have a choice. What, you know, we have free will. We have a choice whether or not we pick up our phone. Like we can put things in place in order to, like, and then like no one's forcing us to do anything. At the end of the day, you know, like it might be harder to, you know, fight picking something up if you're addicted, or, you know, it might be harder to stop scrolling. But at the end of the day, like you do have a choice, and no one is actually forcing you. And then so that kind of helped to clarify that I really want to focus mainly on children in this article, because you can argue that for adults who are developed, but actually children, their brains are not fully developed. They've not yet learned how to fully emotionally regulate. They've not yet learned things like self-control and discipline, and it's just a brain development type. It's just the way it is, you know, just at the age that they are. And so I'd be interested in kind of maybe linking to my conclusion could have something to do with maybe the importance of safeguarding in social media for children, and like bringing into question, like, should children actually be allowed to access social media? And I know that there are some safeguards already in place, but I don't like, because social media is just so integrated into society, and it is so much, I guess, even thinking over the pandemic, how many kids ended up like totally online, which, you know, means they're even more on their screens than before, and makes it even more just the way that things are done. It's just the accepted way that things are done. And there's a side of it which is, well, actually, to a certain extent, it's easier for adults if kids are quietly sitting staring at a screen. It does just make life a bit easier for adults, and I don't want to judge that, but also at the same time, like, how if it turns out that there are some serious issues that it causes to kids, to their brain development, or if it causes serious mental health issues, then actually the ease of the adult should not take precedence over the mental health of children. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with it.
Great. Have you got a headline?
Not really.
Okay.
Something like, I don't know. No, not really. I've got like a few kind of crappy draft headlines, but I need to think about it a little bit more.
Okay.
Something along the line.
The radiation cut apparently is a huge problem that is being uncovered day after day. The art of exposure to all these screens and the emissions, the magnetic fields, tend to produce severe distortions in the brains. Yeah, imagine if they start when they are young, they will be with Alzheimer when they are 40.
That is really, do you have like an article, like research or something you can send me on that?
No. One of my children is doing lots of things. I can find out about it, yeah.
Oh, that'd be fantastic, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Kat. Bruna?
Okay, no, I don't think I put my I got things in order back there. We talked about so many things, and yeah, and I started to put things and I don't know, I think apparently I talk about like the dictatorship at one point, and it's related to the you know, her country's experience, and yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I was maybe thinking like I'd start. I have no headline, but I would start like maybe with like what happened with my brother, and then maybe start talking about the journalist who quit, and maybe like go from there, like, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I have no.
Yeah.
No.
It's I mean, from what you said earlier, it seems like you've got a lot of source material, and there's a lot of elements there which I think will be hopefully quite straightforward to put together into an opinion piece. So I think you're, out of all the topics, I think yours was possibly, you know, the one which I could see coming to fruition quite quickly. Snigdha, how did you get on?
I think I have now like a more clear headline. I think I was thinking on the lines of, is Indian cinema moving backwards in the face of the Me Too movement? Because I think Me Too, like these two words are sort of connected with this idea of change or progress or like positive development. But then you have the flip side, that because of it, things might be going in the opposite direction. There might be the industry who are becoming more insecure and threatened by this idea of change. And that might be the result, the kind of content is coming out, because it is not just Hindi cinema, so to say. There are regional industries which are way more male centered than even the Hindi cinema. And I think that also gives me the idea of looking at everything behind and in front of the camera. It's everything, like who is making and how the movie is making, because there are like 300, 400 people working on a film. It is not just the actors which are there. There are way more people involved. So I want to look at the holistic things of it, like everyone involved, like be it light technician to like the person acting in the screen. And I wanted to be like a more data focused and data oriented article, and like pack it with facts, because so many times these sort of feministic articles are just, people see them as like, oh, it's just one person's point of view, one things, or because she is a feminist writing like that kind of, and these are sort of articles are sort of dismissed and not, given much thought. So I'm like, what, I'm going to pack it with data, things which can't be refuted. No, this is actually happening. It is not me thinking that this is happening.
Yeah.
So I want to take that approach with this article to make it more concrete and to make people notice that this is an actual thing. I mean, if you're living in a country of 1 billion people, you can't ignore it.
No.
Yeah.
And the treatment of women in Indian society is very bad in many cases. And we hear it in the news over here. We frequently, or occasionally, we hear stories of incredible gang rapes and things like this. I mean, it's just absolutely horrific. I mean, not that that's limited to India, but it seems to be a topic which is more prolific than in other places. So it's a very strong topic and very relevant for and I like what you're talking about, getting lots of data, because again, and you can dismiss someone's opinion, but when your opinion is supported by evidence, and when you've got an evidence-based opinion, it's much more difficult to dismiss it. And then also it becomes the reference for someone else later on. So again, providing information which is generally interesting and useful. It's fantastic. Definitely what we're looking for in nonviolent journalism. Maisa.
Actually, I found my topic a bit complicated, a bit a mess for me, but I think I have some sort of an idea of how I want it to be. So I was considering even reaching out to some people who live there in Gaza Strip and ask them about the situation and how normal their lives are. And also I was considering talking about the relationship between Gaza and Israel, and how it can affect the situation for them, and how it can impact people's lives there. And another point would be related to the idea of knowing the grass that I mentioned earlier, which is related to the idea of the relationship between Palestine and Israel. And for now, that's all. I'm actually planning on doing more research about it, about the term, especially mowing the grass, because I noticed that when I did some research earlier, I found out that the idea, the expression is dates back, I think, to 10 years ago or something like that, and it is still used. I found articles that are as old as 2011 and 2010, I think, that talk about the idea of mowing the grass. So I realized that it is not a new expression that has been used, and how it can affect people's lives in Palestine. So that should be it. And for the headline, for the headline, I was considering asking a question. I'm not sure if that would be possible or not, but could be related to what does it mean to go back to normal in Gaza Strip.
Yes, great. Yeah, I like
the
that.
Grass with a question mark.
Yeah, I like that. And the situation for the people in Palestine has changed significantly in the last few years, because a number of governments now, like the United Arab Emirates and I think it's Qatar or Bahrain, or they've been doing these deals with the Israeli governments through the United States, which seems to have completely abandoned the Palestinian people. So there's, I think it's an important topic, and from the point of view of the work I do with the Middle East Treaty Organization, we've been looking at that a lot, because there's always been, until now, there's been the point that there will be no moves towards a kind of normalization with Israel until there is a solution for the Palestinian people. Well, now these Abraham Accords have normalized relationships with Israel, and yet the Palestinian people have been abandoned. So there's a lot going on there, and I think I mean, anything that you can do, anything that you can do to connect with people on the ground in Gaza, and to kind of express an opinion on their behalf, I think would be something which is very interesting to our readers, and also very useful generally for the debate on the Palestine and the role of Palestine in the whole kind of situation of Middle Eastern security. So,
and China is coming into the region.
Absolutely.
Xi is visiting Saudi Arabia, and they're receiving him in a lavish way, with the most important visit in the country ever. And of course, it's going to change. They are going there. The Chinese, they had the plan to move into that region to also counter the influence of the Americans that are moving the problem of Taiwan. But as a result of this change in the balance of global powers in geopolitics, I think eventually the case of Palestine will be occupying a central spot with the intention of resolving it for good. Is a great thing, because the Americans are keeping the status quo. There is no doubt about that.
Yeah.
And I actually know a few people who live there in Gaza Strip. I think I know around 3 or 4 people who live there. I can ask them about their opinions.
Great. Fantastic. It all sounds wonderful. Okay. Well, I closed off your conversation a little bit ahead of time. We're a little bit ahead of where I thought we would be at this point in time. So the assignment for the week obviously is to turn the preparation work that we've been doing today into an article and an opinion piece, which you can continue to do so with your mentors. And next week's workshop will be more ideological, less technical, as we have looked at today's workshop on op-eds, and it will somehow be connected to the power of images, the power of mental images. Our task is to develop the lesson plan for next week. We haven't got there yet, but we're working on it. We've got lots of ideas which we're going to turn into something interesting for next Friday. So as we finish this workshop, just, again, I encourage at the end of every workshop a few moments of personal reflection. What have you learned? What are you taking away from today's workshop, and how would you like to apply that to your own journalism, your own style of writing? And unless there are any further questions, I look forward to seeing you all next Friday.